event today. A lot of planning has gone in from our end to get this organized. I know there was some sort of confusion on certain elements, which usually happens in some of our sessions. I want to make a quick introduction for those who are coming here for the first time or hearing of this for the first time. So I'm a part of Lean in Bangalore, and so are Spurti and Henna. So Lean in Bangalore was started in 2015, and as we speak, we have an active group of about 1,500 members, mostly women, and it's really nice to see men in this room today. We were trying very actively to get men involved, but it's really nice when voluntarily you all are participating in these conversations. We've had a broad range of conversations over the years, ranging from, how do you negotiate at work, dealing with young children, how to deal with, like probably today, emotional intelligence, money management, various conversations over the years, and people have benefited from them, which is why I guess you all are here. To keep this short, I also want to bring to your notice that we have a Lean in Bangalore community, and you can actually get onto our website and join the community. So Lean in Bangalore is also officially affiliated with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean in Global organization. So we are one of the few in India who are affiliated with Lean in Global. We go to the regional conferences that happen, and the annual conference that also happens in August of every year. So how many of you are actually hearing one of our online or offline events for the first time? Okay, great. This is
so nice to see you.
Yeah,
for your first time.
Yeah, so for your first time, again, we also have a bunch of WhatsApp groups, because we realized that one common WhatsApp group wasn't making too much sense. So we have a regular newsletter where we also send the link, and in case you want to join any particular group, you can let us know. We have a group about health and wellness. We have a group about women in tech. We have a group on moms. It's called LIB Moms, and that's probably our most active group. And people have a lot of takeaways from that one. We also have in 2 weeks from now. So the way we try to run this is we try to have an offline session like this once in a quarter, and an online session at least once a month, if not more than that, because that makes it easier for people to participate from home. We have a money management workshop coming up 2 weeks from now. So Henna and I also run Paces, which is a personal finance platform focused just on women. So I'm not pitching us here, but just to tell you all what the next event is 2 weeks from now. We'll send that note in the newsletter, in the WhatsApp group as well. I'm also just going to leave it up to Spurti now to make a quick intro about Lily and what the session today is about.
Yeah, it's so nice to see so many of you today, especially for a topic that's honestly not very comfortable. I think it involves a little bit of vulnerability for you to be here and ask the questions that you probably have in mind. So it's so nice to see you all here. I'm not going to take up too much time. I think once Lily starts talking, you'll really be able to understand what her background and her experience is. But she has been a counselor for about 20 years now, so 2 decades. And she's been a life coach for 4 years. And I've personally actually worked with Lily before. And she's been a source of tremendous support and helping me build self-awareness, which I think has really changed the way I approach so many different situations in my life, both personally and professionally. So I think that's why I feel so confident about having Lily here today, because I benefited so much from her experiences and her knowledge. So with that, I think I'll let Lily take over and get into what we're all here today for.
Thank you. Thank you, Spurti. I like to see faces, so I'm going to stand. So I'm really delighted to be here because of 2 reasons. One is that I'm part of a book club that did Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In a few years ago. And I remember at that book club, we debated women's empowerment, building self-confidence and leadership with great gusto for almost 2 hours. And I was so delighted to inform my book club group that I've been invited to speak at a Lean In chapter. This is when we even realized that there was a movement called Lean In. So it's really wonderful that
that I have been asked to speak at this. Secondly, this is a topic that I'm passionate about because I can see, and through personal experience and the experiences of my clients, like Spurti mentioned, how building that self-awareness and learning how to manage emotions can change your life. And so I'm going to start by asking a question. Is everybody comfortable with show of hands, or would you like your eyes closed? Because I remember in one group, nobody was putting up their hands, and then I realized that there was a certain amount of embarrassment, and I said, everyone close your eyes. And then the hands came up. So up to you. Do you want your eyes closed? I'm not asking very embarrassing questions.
I think we have an open group here.
Yeah,
so
great. I want everyone to feel comfortable. How many of you in the recent past has had an emotional outburst? I know you have my hand too. How many of you have said something in anger that you wished you hadn't? Right? We're all on the same journey. And none of us are exempt from the power of emotions. And I don't have, this is like really a huge challenging topic. There's so much to cover under it. And yesterday when I was putting the final touches to it and trying to figure out, it's different, like I was telling Spurti, it's different when you're counseling and you're taking people through a journey of self-awareness and having to condense things that are important into like a half-an-hour module. And I realized that maybe we started off with the wrong title. It should just be managing emotions, because I think that's all we have time for today. So what I'm going to do, my plan for you today, I'll put down a whole lot of thoughts because there's so much I want to say, and I can keep referring back to this. So I'm going to walk you through, first of all, what is emotions? Because you cannot be intelligent about something that you don't know, all right? And introduce you to the concept of the neuroscience behind emotions, and then we go into what is emotional intelligence, defining it, and I hope to leave you with some tips and one skill so that you can practice to build or manage your emotion. How does that sound? Great. So let's start with emotions then. What are emotions? Now, yeah, great. As I said, they are powerful, right? You yourself know that it is such a powerful force on us. And managing those emotions are critical to our well-being and our relationships. Because sometimes you can damage a relationship for life with just one outburst. I'm sure we've all had experiences of that. I've had somebody, a couple of years back, someone came to me and said, do you remember you said this to me 20 years ago? I mean, when I look back on it, it was like 20 years ago. I had no recollection of it. But the way I made her feel with that statement, she still carried it. Okay? I mean, the fact that we are friends today is because she was willing to forgive. But she hasn't forgotten that statement, and I had no remembrance of it. So it exerts such a powerful influence on us that learning to manage it becomes very critically important. They are also the driving force. Emotions are the driving force behind your motivations and your behavior, whether it's positive or negative. Because we make decisions based on emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's frustration, whether it's sadness, whether it's excitement, whether it's love. There are tons of emotions that we make decisions based on. And also, emotions are really messages that come from the brain into our body, signaling either that there is a threat or a reward in the environment. Okay, so if you look at it scientifically, when the brain senses or interprets a threat in the situation, it releases actual chemicals or hormones, as they're called, like cortisol, adrenaline, which makes you feeling anxious, afraid, uncomfortable, annoyed. All the difficult, challenging emotions come from these hormones. When the brain perceives that the situation is good, then it releases hormones like oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, which makes us feel aroused, loved, comfortable, good. And so we move towards that situation. In the first instance, we will either move away from the situation or we will fight it. Okay? So, having explained what emotions is, when I discovered the neuroscience of emotions some years ago, I was fascinated by the scientific explanation to what seems to be like such an intangible thing, right? So I wanted to walk you through that neuroscience because understanding that is going to also help you manage it, have a visual of what is happening in your body and help you manage that better. So, yes, it's a bit blurred, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, now,
Slightly pixelated.
Okay.
Yeah.
so for those of you who know the brain, there are many, many more parts to the brain than what this picture shows. But what I love about this triune brain is that this was proposed by a psychologist, a neuroscientist actually, Paul MacDonald, in the 1960s, who came up with this evolution of the human brain. And it's such a simple but elegant way to tell us how our brains evolved and the functioning of each part of that brain. So there is this part, the lower part, which is called the reptilian brain or the primal brain. And then over that is what we have the limbic system. And then over that, the bigger part of it is the neocortex or the rational brain. So I want to walk you through each of that.
And also, just we can send these slides out, right?
Yes.
Post this.
Yeah.
So if any of you want this as reference, we'll email it to you also.
Okay, so let's look at the lizard brain. The lizard brain evolved millions of years ago when we were just reptiles. And that's why it's called the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain has just one function, survival. And so to survive, you needed to respond in 3 ways.
Fight, flight,
Fight, excellent. Fight, flee, or freeze. Now, if you look at a lizard, you can see any of those 3 things happening, right? And today, the reptilian brain, as it has evolved in the human brain, takes care of our bodily functions, heart rate, breathing, and our survival techniques. Now, in the millions of years ago, or even before the mammals came, danger was an important aspect, right? Because you needed to survive. Today, when the brain feels like there's danger, it kicks in with the same response that it did millions of years ago. It teaches us to fight, flee, or freeze. Now look at the situations where you've had a tough moment, okay? And you will see one of these 3 things happening. Am I right? You will either fight, or you will walk away from that situation, or you will just go absolutely quiet. Because sometimes don't you walk away from situations and say, I wish I had said that. Why didn't I think of this? Your brain has frozen. Right? Are you getting me?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that you need to understand about this reptilian brain is that it is very, very powerful. And is very often the first seat of any action. Because you have to be protected. And you have to survive. All right? The limbic brain began to evolve at the very early stages of mammalian evolution. So there was a need for motivation to feed, to reproduce, to nurture, to build communities. And so the limbic brain formed over the reptilian brain. It looks very small, but it's again a very powerful part of the brain. It's the seat of not only our emotions, it's the seat of our learning as well, and memories. And very often, behaviors are conditioned from this part of the brain and kicks in from there. Learned behavior that it has stored in its memory. And that's how panic attacks happen. Like for instance, to give you a personal story, about 20 years ago, I was stuck in a lift when there was no backups, no cell phones, and I was the only person in the lift. And the power failed, and I was stuck between the 2nd and 3rd floor of this building in total darkness. And I remember feeling like I was enclosed in a coffin. I started banging the walls of the lift. There wasn't even a cell phone that I could pull out and shine a torch. And I had my first panic attack then. My heart started beating very fast. I was sure that this is it. I'm going to die of fright. Anyway, 20 minutes later or so, to me in my mind it feels like a long time, the power came back on. But since then, this happened 20 years ago. Since then, every time I see a lift that is enclosed, I feel this in the pit of my stomach. I've done tons of work on myself to get past it, and I'm more or less comfortable going up in a lift today, but I still have that sensation. And even when I think about it, or let's say I have a meeting and I know it's going to be a tall building and I have to go up in a lift, and I think about it, my brain will kick in with that same panic attack. Because the brain does not operate in real time. Okay? The brain just records memories and kicks in with the same response, thinking it's happening now. And that's what happens when you think about the past or you imagine the future and you're worrying about the future. You will have the same body sensations like it's happening now. Because that's how your brain is responding to you. And all of those responses are coming from this limbic system. Okay? As man evolved, as primates evolved, the neocortex formed over the amygdala. The amygdala, have you heard the term amygdala? Yes. The amygdala is a very powerful part of the limbic system, and it is a seat of our emotional responses. Okay, it's the seat of our memories, the container of our memories and our responses, emotional responses. When primates, gorillas, and apes evolved, and thinking came in, the neocortex formed over the limbic system and the reptilian brain, and became the seat of our language, abstract thinking, reasoning, imagination, creativity, and it has a tremendous capacity to learn. And very often in psychological terms, or by psychologists or neuroscientists, it's called the executive brain. Okay? Because that's the seat of reasoning. Now, while this is the most dominant and newest part of our brain, it's also the slowest. These two are much faster and more nimble. And that's why when there is a threat of any kind, executive brain activates. And by default, responses go back into the limbic and the reptilian primal brain. And only when you sense that the situation is safe, or that you're not being attacked or rejected in some way, does the action kick back into the neocortex, and you start to think of a solution. Okay? So now that, can we go back to the combined image? The earlier one. Yeah. Do you want me to? It's okay. It's okay. I can keep talking. Messaging between these three regions happens continuously. All right? So when we operate from our limbic brain, let's say the brain perceives some threat, as I said, and when we operate from our limbic brain, then we operate based on our emotions. Anger, sadness, fear, anxiety. Okay? If you want to operate from the neocortex, which is the seat of reasoning, now you can figure out for yourself what you need to do. What do you need to do?
Not perceive the situation as threatening.
Yes. But what does it take to do that?
Calmness.
Yes. You need to calm the brain down, and that takes time. Okay? So that's the difference between reacting and responding. Yes. I just wanted to say that signals go between these three areas very fluidly. The neural pathways between all three are very strongly connected. Okay? And as I said, until you can slow down and calm down these two parts of the brain, your reasoning brain is not going to take over. So that's what you need to do. And the important message that I want to give you here, before I give you that important message, I want to share something that I really like, which is Dan Siegel, who's a psychologist, and he's written a number of books on this subject, so you could Google and read about him and maybe even read some of his books. I like the way he explains the child brain. So he says, imagine this is your spinal cord, then this is your primal brain or the reptilian brain. This is your limbic system. Okay? And this is the neocortex that forms over it. So you can look at the brain like this. Have you heard the term flipped your lid? Right? Have you heard the term flipped your lid? It means that you're having an emotional outburst. So what happens when you flip your lid? The neocortex gets neutralized and you start to operate from the amygdala. All right? It's called an amygdala hijack. And once you're hijacked by the amygdala, to get out of that situation becomes very tough. And so to build the awareness that you're operating from this space and that you need to bring this back to here, to the neocortex, is the skill that you have to build. All right? And that really is the beginning of emotional intelligence. If there is one takeaway that I want you to take from this talk today, is just this one sentence. I am responsible for my emotions and my behavior. Can you repeat it after me?
I am responsible for my emotions and my behavior.
With more conviction.
I am responsible for my emotions and my behavior.
Thank you. How often do we go through?
Sure. That's why you say I'm responsible for behavior. When you say I'm responsible for my emotions, is it emotion or external stimuli? I mean,
Can I answer that
internal
question?
or-
Can I answer that question after I explain something? Or maybe I won't even need to answer. Right? Okay. How often do we make these statements? Show of hands, okay? No, let me ask the question. You're very sure that you're going to be part of the answer. I love it. You make me angry. I hate it when I'm with you. I love it when I'm with you. You bring so much excitement into my life. Let's not only look at the challenging emotions, right? Let's look at the positive ones too. Okay? I think the best way to answer your question is to give you an example. All right? So let's say there's a young couple, boy and a girl in love. And I can feel my throat beginning to play. Boy and a girl in love. Some time goes by, maybe 6 months, 8 months, they're dating. And then the girl realizes that the boy is cheating on her. Okay? What do you think the girl is feeling? Rejected? Threatened? Betrayed?
She's angry.
She's angry? Rejected? Threatened? Betrayed? Angry?
Sad.
Sad? Sorry?
Feeling a burst of varied emotions.
Varied emotions. Right? What do you think she's thinking?
I made a mistake.
I made a mistake?
Maybe she's in dilemma that should have stayed, like she's trying to balance between like pros and cons of moving forward in this relationship.
Wonderful. What's the feeling there? Confusion. Right?
Not exactly thinking in the way she's supposed to be because she's clouded with emotions.
Right. And what happens when you're clouded with emotions? You're operating from the amygdala. You can't think. Right? So, she's thinking, have I made a mistake? What's the emotion? As you said, confusion, doubt. Am I not beautiful anymore? Does he not find me attractive? What's the emotion? Insecurity, rejection. Okay? I was looking forward to getting married to this guy and maybe having a family. And that's not going to happen. What is the emotion? Disappointment, sadness. Right? Do you see the range of emotions happening as the thoughts change? Right? Now let me give you a different scenario. Boy is cheating, and the thought in the girl's head is, this is great. I can now put up my profile on one of these apps. I am going to find a more exciting guy. What do you think the feeling is? Sorry, you all spoke together.
Excitement.
Excitement, relief.
Practical minded.
Sorry?
Very practical minded.
Very practical minded. Okay, that's a thought.
Win-win situation.
Again, a thought, not an emotion. It's an assessment.
Good event.
So there is an event. There is an event here. There are the emotions here, and we completely forget that there is a level in the middle which is called thoughts. It's not the event that is causing these emotions. It's the thoughts that are causing these emotions. And when thoughts change, emotions change. Okay? So now I come back to my statement. I am responsible for my emotions and my behavior. Have I answered your question? Right? Yeah. Because you have a choice today to take a situation and make it positive or negative, to make life more effective for you. Everything depends on how this executive part of the brain is interpreting the situation. Okay? There's a phrase in Shakespeare's Hamlet that I really love. It says, nothing is good or bad, only thinking makes it so. So you take that event of cheating and you can make it good or you can make it bad, depending on your thoughts. All right? Now this girl here who thinks that I'm not attractive, I'm not going to have a family with this guy, I'm so devastated. I'm talking about real life instances that I have dealt with. Okay? So this girl comes to me 2 months after the breakup, and her parents have sent her to me because she's going into depression, and the parents think that she needs medication. And so they wanted me to assess it. Once we analyzed her thoughts, and I helped her change it, and to start becoming more optimistic and cheerful, automatically the feelings of depression passed. It was very situational and not chemical. Okay? Yes.
But as you gave your example about the lift, so when that girl will be, let's say, going to associate with some other guy, won't that all emotions kick in again?
Yes. And that's why they say never love on the rebound. Now do you understand why? Because unless you have worked through those feelings and your own feelings of inadequacy, you will carry that baggage with you into the next relationship. Okay? And I think it's important for me to tell you here that any kind of loss creates grief. And grief is an energy in the body that takes time to subside. And depending on the intensity of your emotion, this is an aside really, but depending on the intensity of that emotion and that loss that you feel, this period could take anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of years. I mean, take people who have lost someone that they really love. When it's the death of a family member that you are very close to, the typical pattern of grief extends over 2 years. And there are various stages in those 2 years when it peaks and comes down. And if you talk to people who've lost people and who've recovered, they will tell you that by the second or the third year, I began to feel a shift or a lightening. And it's because this energy of grief has passed. So I think that kind of answers your question, right? You have to work through it. You have to work through your inadequacies and the baggage that you're carrying with regard to why did I make this happen? Okay? And only once you're confident about that should you actually even look at getting into another relationship. So I think maybe at this point we can look at what is emotional intelligence. So this is actually, have you heard of Daniel Goleman? Yeah. So this is based on Daniel Goleman's definition of emotional intelligence, which is that it's our ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, and to recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. And so there are two parts to it. One is the personal part, and one is the interpersonal part. And people have started working on Daniel Goleman's definitions and his various components that he brought into it. And they've condensed 5 things that are required for you to build emotional intelligence. And these are the 5 elements of emotional intelligence. The first is self-awareness. The second is self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Now, this is a point at which yesterday I was in the state of confusion, because I'm not going to do justice today in the time that we have to walk you through all this. But what I can do is start you off at least on the first two, which is my goal today, because that really is the start of building emotional intelligence. I want to share with you an interesting. Have any of you heard about the marshmallow test?
Yes.
You did. Okay. Can I, for those of you who haven't heard it, maybe I'll just quickly walk you through it. So this was an experiment that was conducted in Stanford. Stanford, yeah, I think it was Stanford University by Walter, one of the professors. And he used faculty and graduate students, children for this particular experiment. So he took a bunch of 4-year-olds, put them into a room and gave them a marshmallow. And he said, if you want to eat it now, you can have that marshmallow. But if you wait till I come back, I will give you 2 marshmallows. And some of the children in that 4-year-old group, as soon as he left the room, grabbed the marshmallow. Some of the other students waited for him to come back. And believe me, he came back after 15 minutes. Now, for a 4-year-old, 15 minutes is a long time, right? It's called delayed gratification. And when I read about the experiment, it said that some of the students put their hands down so that they wouldn't even see the marshmallow. Some of them started playing games in the room. Some of them closed their eyes. But they waited for that 15 minutes for this tester to come back. Now, what he did was 10 years later, as the children were in high school and graduating, they studied the same group of kids again. And they found that a bunch of kids who had waited and delayed gratification and was able to hold their emotions in were doing much better as they were graduating school. Their social skills were better, their cognitive abilities were better, the way they handle stresses were better. There's a whole list of stuff that they studied. And the students who grabbed the marshmallow were doing far worse and not able to cope with the stresses because you want something so instantly, right? These same children were tracked into their 20s and even up to their 40s. And in their 40s, they realized that these people who delayed gratification were better functioning and better successful at even in the workspace. So what these children inherently had was emotional intelligence. The ability to be aware and the ability to regulate. And that is the first 2 points of emotional intelligence. So let's look at awareness. It's not just awareness of your emotions, but it's awareness of your strengths in a workplace. It's an awareness of your strengths, your weaknesses, how you come across to others. How do people respond to you? Because then, once you are self-aware and you know what your limitations are, you are much more open to feedback. Am I right? And you're not feeling defensive about it. And the way to build self-awareness is keep track of it. That's the only way to build it. So if there is one action point that I would like you, one thought I want you to take away is that I am responsible. Excellent. And one action point I want you to take away is start journaling. Start keeping a diary. Because the awareness that you build through that is tremendous. So every evening, take one instance in the day and just write it down. Examine what your emotions were. Examine why it happened, what your strengths and weaknesses were. Do an introspection and write it down. Now, when you do this over a period of 20 to 30 days, you will begin to see a pattern. Do you understand what I'm saying? You will begin to see that there are triggers. Can you take like 30 seconds and think about triggers in your life? Is there a pattern? Do some people set you off? Does a tone of voice set you off? Does some place set you off? Like for me, it was the lift, right? That was a huge trigger. Does a situation trigger you? When you keep a diary for over 20 to 30 days, you will begin to see a pattern. You will begin to recognize your triggers. And recognizing your triggers is important because then you can look at it and build your choices of how you want to deal with it. Okay? I'd like to think of triggers. It's not an original thinking, I read about it somewhere, but I love it, and so I adopted it. Is to look at it like a wound on your hand. Let's say you have a really bad wound that is oozing. What happens every time you scratch it? It's never going to heal. That's your trigger. That wound is your trigger, or scratching is your trigger. That wound is the pain that you carry. The scratching is the trigger that happens. And so you bleed. And here you're bleeding pain. And until you can be aware of what your triggers are, and you're able to make choices to stop that scratching, you are not giving this wound time to heal. The reactivity around it will get worse and worse. So maybe your choices are that I will avoid the situation. In my case, the choice I made was that I will never get into a lift alone. In the initial years when I had to go up in a lift, I was also working with an NGO, and there was a lot of travel and meetings happening. It was not something I could avoid. But I have even walked up to the gate and called the watchman and said, come with me up in the lift. I made a choice not to go up alone so that I will not have those panic attacks. And as I went through years of going up in the lift with no problems, the fear began to subside, right? Or rather, the wound began to heal because I was avoiding the triggers. I even did things like I would close my eyes and go up 1 floor. Then I would close my eyes and go up 2 floors. So a number of years, I did a lot of work on myself to get through this fear of going up in an elevator. So keeping a diary will help you understand what your triggers are. And then you can work from your executive brain, I'd like to call it that, and make choices of how you want to deal with these triggers. Okay? Maybe, yes.
I understand you said we have to work on our triggers and make us easier. But say after a year, the same triggers come into our life. Why does that happen?
Why does what happen?
The same kind of triggers come into our life.
Triggers could go on all your life. Okay?
But how will that affect us again?
Sure. Let's say your mother-in-law is your trigger. Can you do away with your mother-in-law? I'm talking real life situations. But you can change how you handle your mother-in-law. You can change how you perceive it. You can make choices about sitting down and dialoguing with her and coming to an agreement on some things maybe. Right? Like I remember one woman telling me, I wake up in the morning and she's there. I want to make coffee for my husband, she's already made it. She just spoils my day. Okay, she just spoils my day. So she needs to have a chat with both her husband and her mother-in-law, one option, and say, I'd like to get up in the morning and make coffee. Or she can say, I don't like the fact that she's looking after you, please go make your own coffee. Option, right? Or she can change her mind about the fact that this is so threatening. After all, she's done it all her life. If that makes her happy, let her continue to do it. Maybe I'll ask her to make the coffee for me also. Option. So you can learn how to handle your triggers. You can look at it and you can have, once you're aware of your triggers, you can have choices around it. And you can make informed decisions based on those choices. You don't have to feel helpless and powerless and at the mercy of your emotions. Did that answer your question? Yeah, some triggers will never go away, but we have to change the way we look at those triggers, and we have to change the way we work with those triggers. Okay, so I'm still talking about self-awareness. Another way to build self-awareness is also to ask people to give you feedback. Right. When I'm handling this employee at this workspace, I can see he's uncomfortable, and I can't figure out why he's uncomfortable. So you ask other colleagues, what do you think I'm doing, right or wrong? Ask him, what is it about our conversation that makes you uncomfortable?
I had a similar situation, but the other person doesn't actually opens up, mainly with the boys. So if I'm offending
Yeah,
someone,
sure.
but in general, like I had a colleague, I noticed a strange behavior. I asked him, hey, did something happen? I'll be good. Or did something, I even apologize if I made something like which made you upset or something. But it won't really open up, and we never get to know the reason, and that is actually even more, disheartening and probing. That
Sure,
oh my God,
it is,
we
isn't it?
asked, we apologized. Now we don't even know the reason. We are vulnerable and no reason.
I have
Absolutely.
had this situation.
Can I
a
just,
lot of
I can
times.
just answer her question? Is this behavior only towards you or towards everybody?
Yeah, I saw a change in the behavior. Like, earlier it was pretty positive, then it turned to pretty negative.
Okay.
And don't know the reason as well.
You may never know.
And he's not even like answering. He's like, nothing happened, it's all good.
So he's in a very vulnerable place where he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah. What do we do about it then? How do we get out of it?
You have to accept that that's his problem and not yours. That's the starting point.
Mhm.
You don't know what he's working with,
Yeah.
right? Maybe you can bring an element of compassion into the situation. So you are not feeling threatened in the situation.
Mhm.
It's like that famous story of the dog. You know, you see a dog under a tree and you walk down and you try to pet it and the dog snaps at you. And then just when you feel like angry and you want to hit the dog, you realize that the leg of the dog is caught in a trap and the dog is operating from a place of pain. Your anger turns to compassion. So you have no idea what is moving this colleague of yours and what are the demons or whatever that he's dealing with. Okay? But what you can do is bring an element of compassion into the situation and work with him differently. And if it gets really difficult, maybe you could ask for a change so that you can work with somebody else instead of him. That might help both of you. He might feel more comfortable, you would feel more comfortable too. So triggers and choices. I'm sorry, can I?
Yeah, I was just saying that I faced this situation a lot of times, specifically with respect to like feedbacks from like your mentor and work.
Mhm.
I've been wanting more critical feedback, but it's always been like it turns a little like it seems like a situation that they are trying to avoid. So, a mentor at work expect to give you typically critical feedback. Like, of course, like it does not have to get nasty, but it should help me progress. Sometimes the feedback seems very like, okay, yeah, everything is good. Like we have to finish this review, so let's do it.
Okay.
And I have like specifically asked, that, can you give me more critical feedback?
Mhm.
But at times I've been left without anything.
Okay.
And those are situations where you don't want to accept because it's hampering your performance at work.
Is it hampering your performance? If he says you're fine and you're doing well, is it hampering your performance?
Sometimes yes, I'm not sure always, but sometimes yes, because you want to progress, you can't take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And the expectations they have unless you know what the expectations are.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, I'm not sure always, but sometimes yes.
Have you gone to him and spoken to him?
Yeah, I have.
And what is the language that you use? What are you asking for?
I have told that I think that we have KPIs and the feedback I'm getting is not getting aligned to it, and it seems a little vague. I would like to have a little specific feedback so that I can take the next steps in my career development.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been working, but initially it did not.
It did not. My suggestion to you is that a lot of people have difficult feelings around words like critical, feedback. Use language that is different. Okay? So if you were to go to him and take one area and say, this area, I think you're so great at it. How can I do this better?
Okay.
Give me some suggestions.
Sure.
So you're not asking for criticism, you're not asking for feedback, you're asking for help. You're changing the whole paradigm. Okay?
Thank you.
So work on your choices because there are multiple choices to the same problem. And you might find that he's, when you start to map triggers, you might find that he's responding well when you use a particular language. And that it's when people ask for feedback or criticism that he has a problem. Because I've come across many people who just cannot give feedback because in our culture, we don't want to hurt. Right? We want to be the good people. And so the ability to say no to something is also very limited. And I can tell you that because for 2 NGOs, I was a fundraiser. And my success rate was 1 in 10. And I used to think this was abysmal. Till somebody told me that is the standard success rate, because in India, people won't say no. They will say, I'll think about it. They'll say, oh, this sounds great. Let me come back to you. And then they won't respond to any of your emails. Right? So the ability to say no, the ability to be critical, it's much more open and easy in the West. All of you have been in the West. People are very direct and very good at giving feedback to you, even about your personal life.
What happens like here in India, I have this problem, like I am a very direct person and that's not taken me very well here.
Yes.
So how
Yeah.
do I turn that?
You are somebody else's trigger.
Yes.
We all are. Because our lives are always intertwined, right? And so you have to look at that particular person that you want to reach. Can you be a little more less direct? Nobody wants to be direct. I am told that very often, by the way, that I'm very direct. And for people who are touchy, I'm now learning how to make it gentler. It's self-improvement and self-awareness is not a destination. It's a journey through life. Okay? And in spite of 20 years of marriage counseling or individual counseling and working on helping people manage emotions, and knowing the theory by heart and having applied it so much in my life, doesn't mean that I don't have the occasional outburst. Right? But the important thing to ask is, what are your triggers? So, for instance, last year I had a cook. How are we on time?
We're good on time.
Because I can go on with examples.
I think if we can, since we are doing Q&A
Yeah,
along with the
alright, fine.
presentation, I think all of you are okay till 5:30, right? That's when we
Okay, great. So I think I'll come back to this example later. Okay? So that's about self-awareness. Self-regulation. Self-regulation is your ability to then, as you understand it, and as you manage, as you work with your emotions, how do you regulate it? Regulate it in a way that does not make someone else uncomfortable and helps you build better relationships. Like, let me go back to that statement. I am responsible for my emotions and my behavior, which means that I do not take off on other people. I learn through my self-awareness and through the understanding of my emotions to regulate my emotions and to work at some goal. And that I'm not attacking people personally.
But in the process of regulating yourself, I think there's a fine line between regulating and suppressing.
Oh yeah, no, we do not suppress.
So how does that work? How do you do that? Because what I have read and also come across is that long-term suppression leads to different kind of diseases also.
Absolutely. Anything you suppress becomes like a
Yeah.
blocking
So
your
how do
body.
you
I think the best way to deal with it is an example. Okay, let's say you're extremely angry with somebody, and you, let's say it's a boss or a person in authority. Right? Can you express your anger? Right. So what do you do?
express it on someone else. Do it someone else. Your husband probably feels the brunt.
Yeah, that whole joke about hit the husband hits a dog, dog hits a cat, it bites a cat, and so on and so on. The first starting point is to accept that you have anger in this situation. Okay? Write it down. Because emotions have an energy. And you have to take the energy out of the emotion. And any kind of physical action takes energy out of the action, of the emotion. Write it down. I'm angry. When I teach you the skill, I'll go through it more in detail. Talk about it to somebody else. Right. Talk about it to somebody else. Figure out whether you want to continue working with this person, because you cannot express anger towards this person. Right. Ask yourself, why are you feeling? What are your needs in this situation? What's causing the anger? Can you change your perspective on it so that your anger comes down? Okay? His anger could be coming from his own inadequacies. It need not be about you. So are you adopting the whole role of the victim here and as the problem here, when you are not the problem. Okay? So once you go through all of this and you figure out what your choices are, it's all out in the open. It's no longer suppressed. Does that help? Okay. So self-regulation again.
One question. Sure. Sometimes talking about it, can it make it worse as well because you're repeating the same negativity to yourself over and over again?
So there's a difference between talking about it and venting.
Okay.
When you talk about it again and again and again, you're venting. And venting doesn't help anyone. Venting, in fact, compounds the problem. Because what happens is that, like, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say that I got upset with my sister, friend, whatever. I got upset with my friend. She said something. And I went about it to somebody else. The second time I tell that story, you will add something more.
Yeah.
The third time you tell the story, you will add some more. By the fourth time you tell the story, all 4 facts have become reality in your mind. You begin to believe it yourself. And remember, you're sending all these emotions downward. Okay? So there's a difference between venting and there's a difference between talking about it. So if you were to take the same example of anger, going to a friend and saying, I have this situation where when I'm making this presentation, my boss has a way of shutting me up and it really disturbs me. What do you think I should do about it? Is different from that stupid boss. He doesn't give me a chance to talk. He does this, he does that, then it goes on and on and on. And it gets higher and higher and bigger, and this boss becomes this bogey in your mind. It becomes like a personality attack. Distance the situation from the person. Look at the situation, and then you will find creative solutions to it. So be very, very careful that when you are sharing something, you're not venting. Is venting needed? Yes. Because you can spew out a lot of energy with that kind of sharing. And there are friends who will allow us to vent, right? Don't we all have friends who will allow us to vent? But by the time you went the 5th time to that friend, what is that friend going to tell you? Oh, for heaven's sake, get a move on. Right? Because you can't keep spewing out your emotions on somebody else, even if they're a friend.
I think, Lily, if I may add one thing, in our work together, a big takeaway for me has been typically when you think of a situation, your suggestion was you talk about the observations, the facts related to that situation, what your feelings are related to it, and then what your needs are related to it.
Yes.
So you don't end up creating a false story in your mind. It's facts, how you feel, and what you need from it.
Yes. Does that help? Deal with the facts always. Don't deal with assumptions. Because your assumptions could be completely wrong. Right. I assumed this dog was friendly, so I patted it and I got bitten. Right. Assumption wrong. The dog was in a trap. So much of our assumptions, like your assumption that your colleague has a problem with you, it may not be a problem with you, it may be a problem with himself. Right? So always base your decisions on facts. And it becomes, evidence of fact-based thinking becomes even more important when you're working with anxiety. Because when you're working with anxiety, the tendency to assume and to make things bigger than they are and to worry about it becomes really large. And one of the big ways to handle, or the most important way to handle anxiety or to work with it, is to look at evidence-based thinking. Okay? So for each of these emotions, there are multiple ways in which you can work with them. With anger, with anxiety, with fear, with PTSD. But they are like chapters in themselves. Yeah. So let me give you some tips that you can start to practice to start the process of self-awareness and self-regulation. My favorite tip, I'm sure Spurti will smile when I say this, is mindfulness meditation. Okay? I have seen how it works in my life, and I've seen how it works in clients' lives. And today, research has shown, neuroscience studies have shown, that the part of the brain that deals with willpower is also the same part that gets strengthened with meditation. Right. And so, how many of you do yoga or meditation? Wonderful. Do you meditate every day?
Not regular, not regularly, but if you see.
Okay. So make it, you feel sleepy. Okay. Make it a regular practice. Make it a regular practice. And when I say meditation, I'm not talking about 15-minute or 20-minute meditations. I'm talking about like maybe even 2-minute or 3-minute meditations. Even doing a 2-minute meditation or a 3-minute meditation, say 2-3 times a day, will have a powerful impact on building new neural pathways in your brain. And it strengthens that part of your brain, which, as I said, works with willpower. So your ability to make I want choices or I won't choices become more enhanced. And some of you are going to tell me that I feel sleepy, I get distracted. How many of you get distracted when you meditate?
I start doing chores and I start making a to-do list.
I think that's
Very
pretty
normal.
common.
Very normal. And how many of you feel bad about it? The fact that you get distracted when you meditate. Well, let me tell you, distraction is good. Let me take away that feeling of badness. Think of this as that muscle that you're building. What do you need? You need to be doing this, right? Every time you get distracted and you bring your mind back to the meditation, you're building this muscle. Okay? Do not judge it. Just be comfortable with it. Accept in your mind, my mind is consumed with the chores I have to do today. I accept it. Now I'll go back to my breathing. And what mindfulness meditation does is it makes you aware of where you are currently. So even if you do a 2-minute meditation, just sitting calmly, breathing, becoming aware of the air around you, how it touches your skin, how your face is feeling, listen to the noises around you, anchor yourself in the present. And then watch your breath. Can I ask you all to do 3 diaphragm breathing? Start. 1, 2, 3. When you do diaphragm breathing, you do not move. Okay? Your shoulders don't rise. Diaphragm breathing comes from here. Watch me. Only my stomach goes in and out. My shoulders don't move. This is chest breathing. And it won't have the same effect on your nervous system as diaphragm breathing. So learn to breathe right. Shall I teach you a technique of how to learn to breathe right? How many of you know what a champagne bottle looks like? Everybody? Right? Imagine there's a champagne bottle inside you. Okay? The neck of the bottle is in your neck and the base of the bottle is in your stomach. Now breathe and fill the base of that bottle. Easier? Expand your abdomen to fill the base of that bottle. Give the air a color. Visualize it, maybe blue, red, whatever your favorite color. Watch it go through that bottle and fill the base of that bottle. To do that, you need to expand your abdomen, right? And then contract it to shrink that bottle. And allow the air to pass out. Your breathing technique also becomes easier because you have that visualization. Okay? For those of you here who are technical, think of the brain and your body as the OS, the operating system. Okay? And your emotions, thoughts, and your bodily reactions as the software. Any kind of updation or upgradation of the OS is going to help the software. So if your brain is the OS, anything you do to enhance that brain is going to enhance the way you have the emotions. I read that somewhere and I love it. So I wanted to share it because so many of you said that you are from the technical field. So it helps you understand that better. Yeah?
So we have in the meditation process, we just have to watch watch our breath or like focus on the surroundings? What exactly do we do?
Just watch your breath. Breathe for 2 minutes. That's all you need to do. Just watch your breath. Count it if you want. I gave you a visualization, right? Watch it going in and out, in and out. Bring your mind back to your current situation. Feel the air. Visualize yourself seated. It's just being in the present. Okay? And of course, there are multiple meditations that I teach clients. There's the mentor meditation, there's the safe place meditation. I teach people who are afraid the safe place meditation because you condition your mind to particular images. It's like, have you heard Pavlov well? The whole, yeah. So the dogs started salivating when they heard the sound of the bell. So when you condition your mind to a particular feeling of safety based on an image, then when you begin to feel panic, all you need to do is think of that image and your brain automatically comes on. This is it. So many, many things you can do as tips. Okay? Journaling, I already talked to you about. Mindfulness meditation. Change your physiology. Change your body posture. Okay? Now let's say you're walking into a conference room and feeling very diffident or very uncomfortable. What would you do? Your shoulders would be stooped. You would open the door. You would walk in, head down, don't want to meet anybody's eyes. And you would go and quietly sit somewhere, maybe somewhere in the corner, hoping that nobody will pick on you. Change that body posture. Walk in with your head held high. Shoulders back. Because remember, your body postures are signals to your brain. And the brain will then kick in with the right emotions. Okay? You yourself will start feeling more confident. How many of you know superwoman poses? Do you know what superwoman pose is? Stand like that. Stand like that for 2 minutes, your emotions change. The more space you take up, the more powerful you feel. If you look at people who are really powerful, they take up a lot of space. Like even sitting down, there's a difference between sitting down like this. Am I occupying any space? And putting your arms on the chair behind you. You immediately exude an image of power, of confidence. So one of the ways to change your feelings or your emotions is to change your physiology. Let's say you're nervous. Let me tell you the situation that actually worked. I'll mention my sister. So she was going in for this presentation to the head of a foundation, and she was hoping for a big donation from them. And she had heard so much about this guy. And so she's in his office, and he's on a phone call. And he said, give me 10 minutes. And so she went to the ladies' room, and she called me. And she said, I'm not sure I'll be even able to speak. I'm so dependent on this fund coming through, etc. She says, I'm so anxious, I'm so this, I'm so that. I said, just put your phone off, stand in a superwoman pose for 2 minutes, and then walk in bed. And I kind of described it to her. She called me back a couple of hours later, and she said, man, that was amazing. Because she said, when I walked in there, my whole feeling was different. Just standing there like that till he called her, till someone came and knocked on the thing and said, he's ready for you, changed the feeling that she had about herself. And she was able to walk in there laughing and made that instant connection with this guy. And to cut a long story, she got the funding. But she came out of it to call me and tell me how different the experience was when she went in with confidence and when she went in with diffidence. Okay, so changing your physiology is another thing that you can do. Get up, walk, go for a walk, run, punch a pillow if you want. Do something that is body related, and it will help you change your emotion. Take the energy out of the emotion sometimes. Yes, I will ask you a question.
Sometimes if is it possible, is there a risk that you end up being a jerk later because you could be overconfident, you could be over demanding, or you would discount another person's position altogether?
Definitely.
Because you are.
If you do any of those things, you are good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So is there a
what can you do
side?
differently?
Is there a flip side to that? And
Flip side to what?
to all these techniques that we adopt in terms of occupying more space, or having the power posture, radiant entry unity, etc.
It doesn't take away compassion and sensitivity. Just because you feel powerful doesn't mean you should take away compassion or sensitivity. It doesn't mean you go in there and you present your piece with confidence. But it cannot be competitive. It cannot be a win-lose situation. It has to be a win-win situation. And you cannot cut somebody out of the lecture. So don't stop being who you are. All I'm asking you to do is change your feelings about yourself so that you can be more confident, you can regulate your emotions, and you can create effective situations for you. Does that help? Always compassion, sensitivity, important qualities to have. And those are important qualities, but I'll say more of that when I come. So these are the tips that I wanted to leave with you today. The skill I want you to build is something called RAIN.
Just one question there is, do you think it comes a lot more easily to men? Because especially when I worked in the US, that was something we spoke about a lot, where when it comes to occupying more space, feeling more confident, there's something about, I don't know if it's physiology or just conditioning, that it comes a lot more easily to men. Maybe the guys in the room can attest to that or not.
Yeah.
No,
you're
what are
right.
your thoughts on it?
You're right. Research has shown that women feel second or inferior in the workspace. Research has also shown that in the same position, women are paid less than men because they don't ask.
This is very interesting because what you said just now, I remember as a child I used to stand like this and I was always corrected. I was always corrected that this is not the way to stand. Or if I'm spread out on the sofa, I was always corrected, and it just occurred to me right now.
Well, I'm not recommending that you walk into a presentation and start.
Yeah, it's at home, it's at home. I'm standing like this, like normally standing like this. It's not an argument.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening. I'm normally standing like this, and my mother would come and
Well, think of it differently today. Think of it as a strategy to change a lack of confidence. Okay?
Just to add on to what you were saying, something very simple. So to get to office, I think I have to cross the road, okay? And men just cross. And if you're like the bunch of women, they will wait. Only if there's one side.
I think we're in
I disagree with you quite on there.
No, but I also this every day.
Yes?
They're also saying
Maybe
that
it's-
women live longer.
They don't get knocked down by cars. That's a good one.
I think by nature we are more risk averse.
Yeah.
Maybe but again, it's so subjective, right? Today, I think we almost equalize.
They say intelligence and risk averseness are like related. If you're more intelligent, you're more risk averse.
We can make ourselves feel good about it.
Yeah, protective by nature is what I think. That maternal instinct that comes somewhere from there itself, right? Because of our gender. That's how we take this losing all this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm someone who sometimes can cross a road without even looking. And if I see a car coming, I'll just hold it. And the grey hair helps. So let's come to not this one, the rain. Okay. This is the skill I want you to build. And if you can learn the skill, it's a lifelong one. And it's a fabulous skill to build. It plays into what Spurti said earlier about looking at facts and taking it from there. Distancing yourself. She's going to be sending this out, so you'll have it. Okay? So let me walk you through it. The first is recognize, allow the experience to be there, investigate with kindness, and the last N stands for non-identification. RAIN was a tool proposed by Michelle McDonald, who's actually a Vipassana teacher, some 20-25 years ago. And it caught on because it was so simple and so effective. So what I want you to do is think of a situation where you are having difficulty with some emotion. Maybe it's anger, maybe it's fear, maybe it's frustration. And ask yourself, what am I feeling? Okay? Just ask yourself that question. And you can ask that question in the middle of something that is happening. Once you build the skill. So I want you to RAIN One instance every day for the next couple of months. Till you feel the skill is so inherent that it kicks in when you're in a difficult position. This builds mindfulness. Okay? Today I can do rain in 30 seconds in the middle of a conversation. You wanted to ask a question?
What is non-identity?
I will come to that. I'll come to that. So even in just asking that question, like let's say you are angry and you just stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Give it a name. Your brain is moving from here to here. The communication is started. And automatically this intensity will come down. Just in asking that question, what am I feeling, and giving it a name. All right? So all of you have notebooks? I'm going to give you an exercise. 1 minute. Write down as many feeling words as you know. Feeling words as you know. I'm timing you. Start. Go. 30 seconds up.
And we can increase a little bit.
Stop. How many of you have 20 or more? 15? 10? Okay. Who's the person you said you have 20 or more? Can you read out some of the words you've written?
Happy, angry, sad, joy, elated, ecstatic, pissed, frustrated, confused, agony, proud, respected, loved, amazed, encouraged, loved, warm, vulnerable, supported, strong, fair, healthy.
I think this man needs a clap. Very come across men who can articulate feelings. Yeah, but honestly, that was impressive. Can you share something that you wrote?
My feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy, sad, angry, frustrated, fear, agony, pain, agitated, annoyed, upset, kind.
Very good. What about you?
Now I'm being very frustrated, satisfied,
Okay. Lovely.
sad.
Okay. There, on record, there are more than 3,000 feelings. And more than 2,000 of them deal with negative emotions.
One
Or
question.
challenging emotions. Yeah.
I heard in writing one of the feelings this. Is that one of the 2,000 feelings?
Yes.
It's actually a word.
What is this mean? Disgusted.
Yeah.
Upset, disgusted. It's colloquial, right? It's slang.
Yeah.
It's definitely
That's
a
the reason
feeling.
why I asked. It's a slang.
Definitely a feeling.
It's pre-qualifying.
I mean, if I told you I'm pissed, you get it, right? Of course. I mean, it would be in some other form. It won't be in the slang form, but it would be in some other form. But remember, that's about communication. So if slang is what you want to use, as long as you're communicating what you want, go for it. Can I have this feeling slide? So this is an example of feeling words. So there are 7 standard feeling words, which are happy, sad, disgusted, angry, fearful, bad, surprised. But stemming from each of those, you can have a list of feelings. Okay? Now let's say I come to you and I say, I feel bad. Are you in any way enlightened?
No.
But if I come to you and I say I'm bored, or I'm stressed, or I'm tired, or I'm rushed, or I'm overwhelmed, or I feel out of control, doesn't it right? It's so much better communication. And so one of the things that you need to do if you want to practice rain, this will come to you in a yeah. And you can Google for more. I mean, all of this stuff is on the net. I mean, I pulled this out of the net actually. I have a copy of it that I use with clients, but you can Google it. And I would say learn at least 5 feeling words every day. So you're able to better express yourself. When you ask that question, what am I feeling? You will be able to write down very definitely. I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling out of control. Not just I feel pissed or I feel angry or I feel. Because anger itself has so many words that's humiliated, bitter, aggressive, hostile, infuriated, annoyed, withdrawn, numb. I mean, what is it that you're feeling? So it's important even to yourself to know exactly what you're feeling. So brush up on your vocabulary. Okay? Can you go back to read? So ask that question, what am I feeling? And what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? It helps you calm the moment down and takes your thoughts in a different direction so that you are not being reactive. Okay? The second part is allow the experience to be there, which means that you don't get judgmental about it. Very often we act because the sensation in our body is uncomfortable. Right? So you feel like fear. I mean, one of the things of self-awareness is to understand where you feel the emotion in your body. It's called a feeling because it is felt in your body. Remember, the brain is releasing all these chemicals and it's flooding you. So I want to ask you this question. Where do you feel anger?
No, it's right here.
See, for each person it's different, isn't it? I had one client who told me that his ears burn when he gets angry. So for each person the feeling is different. Where do you feel sadness? Throat. Okay. Where do you feel fear?
Hands.
Stomach.
So part of becoming aware, when you keep that journal that we talked about, that diary, is to also write down bodily sensations. Where am I feeling this feeling? Because for some people, they feel it in their knees. One person said that they clench their fingers. Sometimes it's in your arms. Sometimes it's in your neck. Sometimes it's in the back of your head. One person told me that when he gets angry, forget now if it was a woman or a man, but this sensation of some kind of numbness at the back of their head. Okay? So for each of us, our bodily sensations are different. We feel emotions in different places. And understanding for yourself where you feel a particular emotion is part of self-learning. Sometimes I'm able to pick up a sensation in my stomach even before I become aware of the discomfort in the conversation. I'm like more tuned into, oh my gosh, something's happening here again because I feel that piece. Okay? So allowing it to be there is being comfortable with that sensation of discomfort and not judging it, not labeling it, and maybe even say the words, yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm feeling upset. Yes, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Let it be there. And then you move into investigate with kindness. So this is where I talk about compassion and sensitivity. Because when you investigate it, you are asking the what questions. What am I thinking right now? Because remember your emotions, what am I feeling is coming from here. It's not coming from the outside situation. It's not coming from the environment. It's coming from what am I thinking? What are my needs? What are my expectations right now that's making me feel angry? And as you do this, you will begin to realize that this is a situation, it's not you. So I want you to stop defining yourself by your emotions. I'm anxious. I'm an angry person. No. Change that to this situation creates anxiety. So you distance yourself as a person from the emotions, and you're not labeling yourself. And that's self-compassion. Okay? This situation is creating anger. To take, I think What is your example? Was talking about boss getting angry. Yeah. What do you want in that situation?
My boss is
Somebody was talking about colleague or boss.
It's more critical here. Straightforward.
Okay, let's talk to you. Are you okay? Being put on the spot. So your colleague is doing this. What is it making you feel? Let's do rain. What are you feeling?
Upset,
Upset. Okay.
uncomfortable,
Okay. And you know where you're feeling it in your body? You feel the
heaviness
sensation.
in heart.
Heaviness, right? Feeling of sadness, maybe. Feeling of frustration that you can't set the situation right. Right? What are your thoughts about it?
Why is it happening? What's the reason? What have I done? Why is it behaving this way?
Wrong questions. Okay? The questions you need to ask is, what do I want in this situation? What are my thoughts about the situation? What is my need in this situation? That's the investigation. And just to go deep down, your need in this situation is for your colleague to be comfortable with you. So your emotion of feeling upset is coming from that need. The guy outside is only a trigger. You have various thoughts associated with that event, right? And one of those thoughts is, I have a need for him to be comfortable with me. And because he's not comfortable with you, you feel upset. So see how from the inside you bring, outside you bring it to the inside. Okay? And then you are not part of the problem. There is a situation here where there is a trigger, there are your thoughts about it, there are your emotions about it. And you have to be able to distance yourself from that and see that situation. And that is non-identification. Where you are not labeling yourself. The result of doing RAI, the reward is N. Because there's a calmness and a kindness you feel to yourself, knowing that you can distance yourself from this and look at it as a situation. And then when you look at it creatively, then you have the choices of how you want to resolve it. And so you are responding to the situation rather than reacting to it. And like I told you, it must always come from a place of compassion, sensitivity, and as far as possible, it has to be win-win.
But what have I achieved after applying rain to this situation? I mean, after the end point,
You can accept the situation, know that it's not going to change, and so you're feeling upset about it. You can rationalize it, say that maybe it's a problem with himself. And so your ability to deal with it gets better. Your choices of how you want to deal with it becomes more enlarged. So between the experience and your reaction or your response to it, you create a space in which you can do it.
Sometimes it's possible that there is no external reason for it. It could be just me, myself. Like, for example, procrastinate. I'm just postponing certain things on my end, which are creating problems for me.
So procrastination is an action or a lack of an action.
Sure.
What are you feeling? We're talking about emotions here.
Sure. As you were saying, like, why am I doing it? Because I'm not finding enough importance or time towards that at this point in time.
Okay, still thoughts. What are you feeling? Sorry to put you on the spot,
No, that's fine.
but it's a great example.
Irritation, yeah, frustrated.
Frustrated. Why are you frustrated?
Because
What
I'm
are you
not-
thinking?
Because I'm not able to solve my own problems at this point.
I have a need to solve my own problems. That's your need, right?
Yeah.
The frustration is coming from that.
Yes.
And so now you can make a choice.
I'm not able to make the choice because I have other things on my plate to do. I'm not able to work on this particular problem.
Then your choice to put it aside is
Yeah.
also a choice. Procrastination is a choice. It's a choice you're making.
You can change it only if you accept that it is a choice.
Yes. And that you have other choices.
It's
Are you shying away from it? I mean, running away?
no, it's like
You You can ask yourself why. Why am I delaying this?
But there is something else which is more important, which is
Yeah.
more pressing.
Yeah, then skills like prioritizing, goal setting, time management will all have to come in to address your procrastination.
Or sometimes I think just working with your boss to get the workload down because there's only so much you can do.
No, so
I think it's intent is to find out why is he sabotaging the
exactly. Rather than external factors, there are internal things which I have to sort out. As you
Yes.
said,
You need to
time
ask the
management.
question and you need to go deeper down into why you're feeling frustrated, what is your need, and if this is causing irritation, the procrastination is causing irritation, it is because there is an output that you want to achieve, right? And then the choices you make are, if this is important to me and my irritation is building, I know I have to address it. Right? Like, I mean, let me take a simple example, like the brakes in my car. So 3 or 4 days back, it's going kata, 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 and I knew there was something wrong with my brake. So a million other things to do. I'm not attending to it. But each time I get into my car and drive, the noise is getting more, and I'm getting more and more and more irritated. I'm procrastinating, right? Until I decide that this is a priority. And then I go straight to the workshop and got it done. I took the time off. Okay? But it reached that level of irritation for me to act on it. Because I was prioritizing everything else. So you need to come to an understanding of what is frustrating you, what is irritating you, with regard to shelving this particular task. And then bring in skills of prioritizing, time management, goal setting. Even if you were to give yourself a deadline, like by this Friday I'll get it done. Build a ladder. Let me give you another tip. Always when you have a difficult task on hand, build a ladder. So let me tell you what a ladder is. Take a ladder and let's say it has 5 rungs. On the bottom rung, you say, step number 1, I'm going to be doing this and give it a time. By the end of this day, I will do this. So maybe it is just some part of that task. Rung number 2, add 1 more. Give it a timeline. And the top of your thing is your goal. Divide it up into like 5 or 6 steps so that it's not looking overwhelming for you. And give it a timeline. It's a great tip because I build ladders for myself all the time.
I have a question. And some to the points like my son, I have a 11-year-old son, and he was actually I left him to really the 3 years with my in-laws and everything. And now when I see him like doing something which is in his grandfather, which is like really ridiculous, the way he brushes. For example, and I told him 100 times, like, say suppose the way he spells powder is like powder.
When he brushes his teeth,
Brushes. The way he holds the brush and do the brushing, also I don't like it. But anyway, don't like means there's not going to help. It's not. There's not cleaning teeth properly. And powder, because that powder he say powder or some way he is actually pronouncing very wrong. But I told him 100 times. I think I completed 100 times, but he's not changing.
is he with you now or is he with
He's with me. Past 4 years now. But still is not changing the way, like how many times I tell him, but that time he repeats like parrot and next time actually he is forgetting. Maybe he is forgetting. And yeah, so many triggers like this. So when I see him doing that, no matter what I'm doing, like I actually get a lot angry and I do something to him. Do means maybe I talk harshly. Very rarely I do it.
So what's making you angry?
It's like what's making I'm not angry because that's not right. What he's doing, that's what I'm doing. It's not like see, he's actually feeling very shy. He's not actually making friends in the apartment. So he'll go, but he's not expressing. There's a lot of shyness and he's not able to talk with other kids. I feel he's not normal like other kids who are there. I understand he may take some time, but it's like from past 4 years, still he's not
So
adjusted.
is your anger coming from the fact that he was shy and introverted and not able to make friends, or is your anger coming from the fact that he has a different way of brushing teeth from you?
Not from me. Different way I accept, but if it is correct. If it
Are you
is-
displacing your anger? Because your anger sounds like it is at a different situation. It's sounding like that to me, so I'm asking the questions.
I'm-
Is your anger from the way he is brushing his teeth? And
No,
the
in
way
that situation, when he's brushing, yes. And when he's with the kids and he's shy and he's not talking, yes, shyness. And it's all depending on the situation, what he's doing. I actually told him, tell him always sit on the ground, and then when you are eating, please look at the plate. Don't look at surroundings. Always take him out and go watch him here.
How old is he?
He's not 10 years, but I'm telling him, I'm helping him always. It's like 1 year or more, 1 year I completed saying the same things. He didn't change.
Does he have an attention problem?
Attention problem.
Is he able to concentrate on something for it?
He is able to concentrate. I saw him doing something, he was doing some experiment, but 2 to 3 minutes he didn't turn his head any other side of his head. He actually thinks logically very, I am more, he's in school topper and I am more, but
So is your need here for him to correct his habits, or is your need here for him to become friends and to become more extroverted?
yeah, I want him to talk, like express whatever he's facing. Suppose actually recently, 1 week back, I put him in an alternative school, and there, after a year, yesterday actually I heard something from him saying that some gang of people beating him and people are shouting, kids are shouting
Is he
at him, and maybe 3-4 people are friendly with him. But he said that something. He bleeded from his actually urinary tract or something because he was beaten by someone. I still don't know idea. I have to figure out what happened to me. I'm
Sounding
trying
like,
to reach the
it sounds like bullying is happening, right?
uh,
Anyway, I mean, this is too big a topic to
Yes,
talk about here. I just want to I want to help you understand where
So,
your
I
anger is coming from, and you need to do a lot more introspection around that. Because also you have to look at the nature of this child. Not everyone is an extrovert. Many children are very shy and very introverted, and will remain shy and introverted all their lives because that's part of their personality. So their ability to express, to articulate, to verbalize something will all be a little more limited than an extrovert who's a chatterbox or who can talk.
Yeah, I understand. But this thinking,
So
yeah.
maybe you need to work with a child psychologist to figure out how to help him to open himself up. But I think from your side, you need to look at where is your anger coming from. And it
It's like-
sounds to me like, I don't know if you all agree with me or whatever, but your anger sounds like it's coming from a multiple levels of expectations, right? And so some of it may be unimportant, some of it may be valid, and so you need to prioritize, let some things go. So you're not angry with him all the time, because if you're angry with him, his ability to come out will also get hampered in some way.
More than me, actually, his father is more worse.
Okay.
So I was
Okay, one of you.
Just one quick question. When you say investigate with kindness, is that my ego also?
Give me an example. Can you,
So for
can you tell me more?
So, for example, it's just a hypothetical situation in my head. It is a situation like, say with your family, or say someone you're living with, and you don't like, say the way they live versus the way you live. And then you are doing so much work on the situation and rationalizing it and trying to make it better for yourself. And at one point you're like, why me? Like, why should I be putting in so much work when it's a shared situation?
Sure.
So ego kicks in, right? So how do you deal with it, and what is just your thoughts?
What is the outcome you want?
I mean, it's not a specific situation.
I'm asking you, what is the outcome that you want? And is that outcome to be met by only your efforts? Or is that outcome can be met with, it requires joint effort?
Joint.
Right? Then you have to figure out how you're going to talk to this person. gauge what is a cooperation. So now we are going beyond M. This is only to understand how to analyze your emotions and how to reach that the place of nurture. Okay? The solutions that you are going to build will come after this. So you are now reaching that solution stage. Okay? You've understood, you've done, you are angry, upset, frustrated. You understood why, because you have a need for people to work. I'm just extrapolating. You have a need for people to work together to solve this particular issue. And so now you need to make those choices. And that choices could be like you could have 10 different choices. I'm not going to get cooperation from this person. If I want to meet that goal, I have to do it myself. I can sit down and talk to him. I can get maybe somebody else to talk to him about it. You know, choices are multiple when you come to looking at something as an issue, because once you separate person from the issue, then solution solving kicks in. And it's not clouded by emotion. So you can be as creative and imaginative as you want. Okay? So to give you an example, I was working with this woman whose husband would come and just sit in front of the TV. And she had this dying need to just have time to talk to him. And he wouldn't even look at her. So I said, his problem probably is, I asked her what's his problem. I said, maybe he's tired at work and he just wants to unwind and he's only relating to the monitor. So I said, okay, so it's not about you, it's about him. And can you think of creative ways in which you can reach him? I said, don't give me an answer, go home and think about it. Can I tell you what she did? She threw the TV out. She did something very creative.
She sat down and watched.
She made a video of herself talking to him. Played it on the TV for him. Watch it. Don't listen to me, watch it. She got his attention. So that's what I'm saying. You can be as creative as you want.
And then we started.
I'm talking about creativity. So it became a very humorous situation, and they were able to actually cross the bridge.
I have a question. Like we are talking about all sorts of emotions. So in one part is instinct and guts. So is it a part of emotion, or like is it something like we can train ourselves for, or how to deal with that instincts and guts?
Okay, you're talking about gut feeling?
Sorry?
Are you talking about gut feeling?
Yes, because like in many situations, even though you analyze the situation and you disconnect yourself from the situation and you start logically thinking about it, but there are a few things which we define as gut feeling or instinct.
Sure.
A few things will always tell you that
And you're probably right. Your instinct could be right.
yes.
So I'm going to differentiate here. I know what the question you're getting at. I'm going to differentiate here because instinct and gut are thinking. And it's different from emotions. Okay? It's a judgment that you're making. And judgment comes from the executive brain, which is in your cortex.
Okay, so if I correctly recall, in your slide where you showed the key parts of the brain, so there was one instinct was part of the
Limbic brain. Limbic brain, yeah.
limbic brain. So limbic brain. So
So the feeling from your judgment will be in your amygdala, in the limbic brain. Okay? So let's say that I'm going to pick Spurti to do my next event because I have this instinct that she's great at this. It's a judgment that I'm making. I'm describing an instinct, but it's a judgment. And research has shown that very often instinct comes from previous experiences. Okay? So it's a judgment that you're making, and all judgments are in the neocortex. Okay? When I think that, there is a feeling of satisfaction because the emotion in me is satisfaction or happiness or. So I want you to differentiate the two.
So
Can you act on your instinct?
Yeah.
That's a choice you have to take after weighing the pros and cons. Okay?
So, like many times people say that like the best decisions are always made when you follow
Instinctively,
your
yes.
instincts.
Sure. That's decision making, right? It's separate from emotions.
So, if instinct is a form of judgment,
Mhm.
then as per my experience, judgment is also comes from emotions, or these are two separate different things.
Emotions will follow judgment. Remember, between the event and the emotion, there's a thought. Okay? Whether it's a judgment or something that you're thinking about, like this guy cheated on me. My judgment is that I'm not attractive, and that's why he cheated on me. Okay? But I saw various signals over the year, so my instinct was not to trust him. Now that's the difference. Got it? So that's that gut feel, but the gut feel is coming from a place of judgment, from a place of experience. And that gut feel and that instinct will be accompanied by an emotion. Because every thought is accompanied by an emotion. And it's emotions that make us act. It's not thoughts that make us act. Okay? I can give you my favorite example that I'm sure I've used with you at some point. Imagine that you're at a traffic light. You're in the extreme right lane. You want to turn right. And there's a bike on your right side. You assume that that guy is also going to turn right. Right? The signal changes and that guy cuts to the left in front of your car, almost causing an accident. What are you feeling? What would you do? Okay, before you do anything, before you feel angry, what are you thinking? Stupid. And each of those thoughts will create an emotion, right? You see, emotion that spurs you to act. So what would you do? Hit the brake. Would you roll down your glass, scream some abuses at him? Right? Sorry?
Without rolling.
Without that rolling, you might shake your fist at him, whatever it is. But let's say as he turned left, you recognized. And you had heard the previous night that his mother or his wife or whatever is seriously ill in hospital, very critical, and the hospital is to the left. So now you have more information, right? Now what are your thoughts? What are you feeling?
Sorry.
And what would you do? What would you do?
Still put the brake.
But you would let him go, right? You wouldn't be shouting abuses at him. Event hasn't changed. Your thoughts changed, your emotions changed, you acted differently.
So you're suggesting we take everything as positive? I mean,
Fantastic way to live life. You can take every negative and turn it into a positive. It's a fabulous way to live life. In every negative situation, ask yourself, what are the positives in life? And when you ask that question, it's an amazing question to ask. Your emotions change.
it's like we are always empathizing with the other person, and we might be the one who needs empathy.
Yeah? I mean, when I especially listen to people in depression and they're telling me stories of their depression, you realize how much they have allowed depression to define who they are. They have done such wonderful things with their life. There's an amazing strength there. There are amazing achievements there. But you ask them, tell me your story, and it will be about the depression. Okay? And then I ask them, can you write the story of your life for the last 3 years from a positive perspective that does not include the depression? And people actually weep. Because for them to see positive is so difficult.
But over-empathizing, sometimes people take it for granted. That okay, they'll understand it.
What is over-empathizing?
Over-empathizing is like I always understand what situation are you coming from. And I'm like trying to help you. And I'm just like, oh, I'm understanding. Oh, I understand.
Like anyone step over you.
Yeah, more or
being
less
a puppet.
similar. Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Bad. I mean,
Then you need to do something about it. Right?
yeah.
Ask yourself where it's coming from. Have you been told in childhood? See, when you do the I would say go down all the way to your childhood. Maybe there is something, some messaging that has happened in your childhood. You know, all of this can be
But
done in
sometimes it's
therapy.
in your career also. If you have been very aggressive in the beginning of your career, and as you move leadership ladders up, you realize that you have been really aggressive in the way you have been dealing with situations and all. And people have started telling you that you should empathize. And that empathy, when it crosses the border and becomes like an over empathy situation, which could still lie in your childhood when your mom told that, okay, help your brother, he's younger than you, he's younger. So your maternal instincts actually kick in much harder than what they are supposed to be at work.
Mhm.
So how do you
So
actually
you have
analyze-
turned from aggressiveness to being a puppet. Is
Yes,
that what you're
something
saying?
like that. Yes.
So then you need to draw balance somewhere there, right?
Right.
Not allow people to walk over you, but don't be aggressive, be assertive. There's a big difference between aggression and assertion. Assertion is getting what you want, but in a way that's a win-win for everybody. Okay, what you are doing here is lose-win.
Yes.
And this is not a good situation either for the loser or for you, because you are making that person into a monster. You are allowing that person to become aggressive if you don't assert yourself. So look at that situation, and if you're talking about a particular person in your life, think about it. It's time to assert yourself and come out of it. Stop being, there is a deep need in you to be liked. But very often we tend to do this because there's a need to be liked, to be so, and that often doesn't work. You have to be able to draw that balance and see what are you creating in this situation, both for yourself and for the other person. You are not doing the other person a favor. You are allowing them to adopt behaviors that are damaging for them. Okay? I want to end with my favorite quote. So Viktor Frankl was someone who survived the concentration camp and wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about purpose as one of the reasons that guides you. And this is my favorite line from that book. Between the stimulus and the response, there's a space. That's the space we've been talking about. When you do rain, you're creating that space. And in that space lies your power to choose your response. So you're not reacting, but you're responding. And in that response lies your growth and your freedom. Thank you.
I think we've gone a little bit over time, but everyone was so engaged. I really didn't want to cut off.